How often do video games overwhelm you? And I'm not talking about looking at your Steam backlog and going, oh God, oh man, I will never experience all of these games. There's literally not enough hours left in my life. Can they please stop releasing absolute bangers? I am trying to just enjoy myself without feeling the need to play every single thing that ever gets released. No, I'm talking about that got a little real for me. I'm talking about the times that you're playing a game and something is chasing you down. There's a wall of blades on the left side of the screen and you are running away from it on a platformer, or you're playing Sonic and you're drowning and you have to get to an oxygen bubble in time, and oh my god, just barely. And it's playing that music and it's freaking you out, man. Or you're just looking at the number of quests that you have in Baldur's Gate and there's like a time limit to the quests and you're like, there's no way that I can possibly accomplish all of these in time. There are moments where games intentionally overwhelm us, and there are moments where I think games unintentionally overwhelm us. And then I think there are times that we do that to ourselves as creative people, right? If you're making a game, if you're working on whatever interesting project you're working on, I think there's a lot we can learn from how games manage this whole concept of overwhelm. And that's what we're talking about today. This is Game, Develop, Repeat. I am your host, Chris. Let's get this started. The single clearest example I have of this overwhelming feeling in a game is Sonic the Hedgehog. When you are drowning in an underwater level and the music is just getting more and more anxious and overwhelming and frankly horrifying, and you're panicking. It's like carefully designed to induce a panic attack. There's numbers on the screen. Your guy starts to choke. You're running towards these bubbles. They're not quite close enough. How far away are they? How soon can you get to the bubble of air? Is the bubble of air going to spawn in time? Oh my God. And then relief. The bubble pops up. There's a similar moment in Subnautica when your character starts to black out as you're heading towards the top of the ocean and just trying to desperately reach for oxygen, and then maybe you make it, maybe you don't. These moments are so powerful. And I'm looking at the ones that are literally drowning because I think it is one of the most core, fundamental feelings of panic, of this time limit, of I only have this long. There's like this internal timer. You're like, I have this many seconds. I have this many seconds. I have to get to air or I'm going to drown. People have dreams about drowning when they're stressed out. I've had this dream. I've had the dream where I have too many things going on and I'm underwater and I can't breathe. And then suddenly I go, oh wait, I can just breathe the water. I don't know if you've ever had one of those. Apparently it's somewhat common as like a stress dream, like kind of like having your teeth fall out in a dream, or having that guy chase you up the stairs. And no matter how fast you run, he just keeps getting closer. All of these experiences of stress and overwhelm get simulated in games, sometimes on accident. I think one interesting example of this is old school Baldur's Gate. I mentioned it in the intro. We're going to dig a little deeper here. In Baldur's Gate, you have all of these quests, right? And in the new editions, I think this is somewhat managed because they gave you a quest log. But in OG Baldur's Gate, I don't think you had a quest log. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I remember taking notes on a piece of paper, because otherwise I wouldn't remember what I was doing. And there were time limits to these quests. So if your character slept too much, boom, you ran out of time. Something bad happened in the world. There were actual consequences to you taking too much time to get to the next quest. And you could have, depending on who you've talked to and when you've activated this quest, you could have this giant list of quests that are all due around the same time. And you're just like, I'm doomed. There's no way. I only have so much health and so many resources, and I have to rest in order to heal. And my God, I how can I possibly manage this? I'm never going to get all these quests done. People are going to die, and it's going to be my fault. Baldur's Gate was good about this. And if you think about this, for somebody who's never played Baldur's Gate, OG stuff, if you've never played those old games where there's like a lot less quest log, a lot less map, a lot less this, that, and the other, I want you to imagine for a moment Skyrim. Think about the number of quests in Skyrim, right? What if we took Skyrim and it did not track those quests for you? That's basically what you're looking at. I mean, there were probably less quests in Baldur's Gate. I think, I assume so. I don't have that clear of a memory of it, but that's the feeling, right? Imagine your entire quest log in Skyrim, which is already overwhelming, right? You're going from quest to quest to quest to quest to quest, nonstop in that game. Imagine if you had no quest markers, no description of the quest. You just have to remember what the person said to you. And there's like some indication. It'll say, hey, you got a new quest, or like, hey, here's this mission you got to do. But the quests were so embedded into the rest of the story, into the rest of the game, that they didn't even have something to demarcate them in like a list, right? You couldn't go through all of this. I hope I'm remembering this accurately. I'm almost trying to rewrite history in my brain right now because I keep going, they did a re-release that does have a quest log. They did a re-release that does have a quest log. And I remember hearing about that and going, oh my God, that's so amazing. I'm glad they did that. And part of my brain wants to go, no, there was always a quest log. Games so consistently have quest logs that they've always existed everywhere, forever. You know? I'm thinking back to Morrowind now, too. Morrowind had a different kind of a quest log, I think. I shouldn't even talk on it because I don't remember it clearly, but I'm vaguely remembering it being like more descriptive rather than like a strict list. I think the further I've gone through gaming and the longer that the industry has been around, the more that it's moved towards, as far as AAA games and more approachable games go, the more it's moved towards a list and a marker on your map and all of these things to keep you from feeling like you're drowning. And I want people to explore drowning you in quests to some extent, because we explore drowning in terms of like time limits. We explore overwhelm. We explore just like crushing you with so many ideas and so much stuff. We don't explore that. We explore crushing you with so many restrictions and like, you have to get this done in this time. You have to get here. You have to do this, whatever. And then we don't explore like, here's all of these things that you have to manage. And by the way, managing them is completely on you. I say that, but then Satisfactory exists. Right? And it has clear, distinctive quests to some extent. It has clear, distinctive guideposts, but the game itself is profoundly overwhelming. But it does bring you along. I think what I'm talking about here is this spectrum of overwhelm. I always hated timers in games, right? Because they scared me. They freaked me out. Even the loosest of timers, the moment that a timer appears on the screen, I go, oh God, now I have a time limit. Now I have a fail state. Now I have to do this and this and this, and I have to rush. And oh my God, what if I take too long? What if I take too long? This is a panic for me. And I think there's a different version of that. I think there's a lot of different versions of that, but that's the quick go-to version of this feeling, right? If we want to make the player panic a little bit, we give them a timer. We give them a time limit, and we say there are consequences if you don't meet this time limit, if you don't get it done within this time limit. And I just think there are interesting consequences to be explored from different angles. There are things that I have not understood yet in game design that have to do with consequences for not exploring everything, consequences for not managing your time well that are not conveyed through a timer, but just through penalties for not completing something. How many times have you played a game and gone, why am I just wandering around doing this while the world is about to end? Right? I don't think we handle that effectively yet. I don't think there are many cases in which we go, yeah, genuinely the world is about to end, and if you start going fishing for Easter eggs, you're doomed. Like every time that happens, we just communicate it through a timer, and we go, "Yeah, you have to run through this area. This, trust me, you don't have to explore for bonus stuff right now because you're on a timer." What about just like an actual consequence to dilly dallying? You know, I don't know how to implement that in a fun way, and I want to think through that, and I want to play games that do that. Maybe I want to experience them at least. But let's think about how this all ties into game development, because I think there's a lot to learn from a quest log. I think there's a lot to learn from a timer and the way that it makes me feel while I'm playing a game compared to the way that it makes me feel while I'm working on making a game. Have you ever heard the phrase work expands to fill the allotted time? Because I love and hate that phrase. I think it's true, and I hate it because it's true. I don't like timers. I don't like time limits, but they're so useful. None of us like having that pressure. And the less pressure you have while you're working on something creative, kind of the better. I don't want to have a ton of pressure on me for a creative project to succeed or for this or that or the other, because then I can't focus on just making the cool thing. But I think time pressure might be different. I'm not 100% on this, of course, but I want to play with this idea, and I want you to play with this idea if it interests you, which is time pressure is different from like the world pressure, like or financial pressure or whatever else. If you say, I have to get this project done in a year, that is a very different kind of pressure than I have to make $10,000 off of this project. You have control over whether or not you finish the project in a year. You do not have control over whether or not you make $10,000 off of the project. Now, you have control over your odds of making $10,000. You have control over how much exposure you get for the project. You have a lot of things that you have control over. But you don't have direct control over the amount of money that your project makes. You do have direct control over when you finish the project. Now, that time pressure can be tricky, though, because if you set a time limit that is way too aggressive for a skill set that you do not have, then it goes from motivating and clarifying to completely overwhelming. It turns into that Sonic level where you're drowning, but you are constantly 1 second away from drowning, right? It goes to this point of just there's nothing I can do. I can't get anywhere. I can't get to the next air bubble because I'm drowning instantly. The time pressure is very important and very useful and just an incredible tool for clarifying your vision and for clarifying your scope and locking things in and getting focused and making progress and learning. But my God, do I hate it when I set it up wrong. I have always been resistant to time limits. Always. I don't like time limits. I want to just sit and take my time. I want to do things as slowly as I want to and just do my thing. But work expands to fill the allotted time. And if the allotted time is as long as I want, then I will never finish the project. So more and more I'm getting into this thing of I have to have some level of time limit. These days I have kind of a weekly time limit, right? I have this podcast out once a week, every week. That's the deal. It comes out. I've started doing the YouTube Shorts thing. It's like, okay, we're doing 3 of these every week. I basically have to get it done at the beginning of the week. Otherwise, I'm going to be miserable all week running to get it done by each day of the week. And I'd rather have 1 big time limit than 3 small ones, right? I'd rather have 1 bigger deadline than 3 tiny ones because it's easier to manage. I can just boom, crank it all out in a day. And these things allow me to keep learning and making progress, but they have to be manageable. Now, let's talk about the quest log side of this whole thing. I used to do something, and this is, I think, a terrible idea that sounds like an incredible idea, and I really would love to hear what other people think about this, because I'm betting that it varies. I'm betting that it depends on you and how your mind works and how you produce things. But for me, this sounds like a really good idea, but is actually terrible for me. I used to break down everything into a bunch of sub goals, into like a checklist. I used to try to break down one big project into a ton of tiny things and then go, okay, I'm just going to work through this list and then it'll be done. And that overwhelmed and destroyed my motivation. It made me go, okay, I can't do this. This isn't working. Like I was trying to make a video game quest log, right? I was trying to go, okay, here's the entire to-do list. Go through from step to step to step to step to step, and you are done. The reason this sucks for me, the reason this doesn't work at all for me, and I'm going to present an alternative in a moment, which I think is fantastic, at least for how I work. But the reason that this method doesn't work for me is because I'm laying out all the steps at the beginning when I don't know anything, and then I lay out a plan, and then I have to change it. And the moment I change it after I've already laid out this whole thing, I get frustrated. And I go, I'm failing because I'm not following the plan that I intended to follow. Something has gone wrong. Nothing's gone wrong. It's just changed, and that's fine. But that's how it would hit me, right? So what I do now is I just lay out all the ideas. I just have a binder full of ideas, right? I've been using this for like 2 weeks now, and I'm loving it, absolutely loving it. The previous thing did not feel this good or last very long, and I didn't produce things off of it. The previous checklist form just overwhelmed. But this form, which is a binder of ideas and concepts, and here's a bunch of quests for me, essentially. It's just, here's side quests. You can do these, you can do this, you can do this other thing, whatever. And then there's just the main quest, which is you're doing this every week. This has to get done. On these days, you do this thing, right? I have little checkpoints. But this idea of writing down all of my creative ideas, I can just capture every single one of them. I don't have to commit to the idea and create an entire checklist for it. There's no friction point there right at the beginning, or I've moved the friction point down the road. Let me attempt to clarify this because I feel that it's been a bit messy. Rather than write a to-do list, I'm writing down every idea that comes up to me within a category in a binder. And then I can look at that list of ideas and I can say, oh, I'd like to explore this one. And then I can start exploring it. And I just have it written down, and I don't need to have a step-by-step because I don't know what the step-by-step is until I start exploring the idea. And I feel that this acts like a really good video game quest log. Because a bad video game quest log tells you exactly what to do or gives you no guidance whatsoever, right? It's like, speak to Jessica. And you're like, I don't know what city Jessica is in. Who is Jessica? How do I find Jessica? I've never interacted with a Jessica in my life, right? But it's like a very specific step that you have no way of getting to. That's a bad quest log. A good quest log is like, explore the city of blank and find, and it gives you some little hint and whatever. And then you got to go and you got to explore and you got to find stuff out. I'm trying to make my creative organization resemble a good quest log in games. And I didn't frame it this way until I started thinking about quest logs in games. And I went, oh, I'm kind of learning from that, aren't I? Which is nice. It's kind of the whole point of this podcast to some extent is like, what interesting stuff can we learn from games and bring into our own creative process? But this is the big takeaway for me is there are things in games that are profoundly overwhelming, and they show me things about my own life and about my own psychology that overwhelm me. And then I can look at those things and I can go, okay, how can I manage those feelings of overwhelm when they're real, when they're in reality? Because in a game, it's just, oh, this is fun. I'm getting overwhelmed. It's kind of crazy, so on and so on and so on. In reality, you're like, oh my God, I can't handle this. I'm freaking out. I got to call my friend. Like, it's a whole thing. And I'm recognizing that I can just learn a little bit about myself from looking at how I react to sonic drowning. And it always sounds absurd when I say stuff like that, but is that not the point of art? Is that not why we make art? So that we can understand our own feelings, understand each other's feelings, relate to each other better, relate to ourselves better, learn to process these things through a fictional version of them, and then go, oh, you know what? Maybe I can manage these incredibly overwhelming moments in my life. I'll just learn a little something from how I managed it while Sonic was drowning. I'll space things out. I'll give myself checkpoints. I'll make sure that I have a moment to breathe. And even if it gets really intense, I'll just design it so that, yes, the pressure's on. I want to get through this level as fast as I can, but I'm always going to have a chance to take a breath. Always give yourself a chance to take a breath. Otherwise, you're going to hear that spooky music and you're going to start freaking out, which might be okay, at least for a few seconds, as long as you're close enough to one of those air bubbles. I only have one question for you this week, and it is, how does your life's quest log function? My life's quest log has changed over time. I was putting everything into one category for a long time. It was all main quest. Everything was main quest. Everything was essential. Everything has to happen right now. You must do this or else. And then you don't do anything because everything is main quest and you can't prioritize anything. Imagine a game where everything is part of the main quest. You're like, what? Why does some of this progress me and some of it doesn't? Why are all the miscellaneous quests put under main quest? That's infuriating game design. So I was doing that. Now I think I've got a little bit of a clearer distinction between main quests and side quests and all these things. I've got the quests written down. And I do a little weekly progress thing, right? I write down my progress on the main quest, which is game development and podcasting and Twitch and all of these things. I write a little bit down about that progress, you know? I take notes about how things are moving forward, and it's almost like, I mean, it's not a level up system, but it's something to show me that we are moving forward. It's a little check-in combination with a quest log of, hey, these are the ideas that I'm exploring. Let's move in these general directions. So how does that work for you? How do you manage your life's quests? You know? Is laundry part of the main quest? I feel like it might be. Isn't that annoying? I feel like laundry might be part of the main quest. I mean, it's a miscellaneous, but it's like a daily, you know? It's like an MMO. It's like a weekly on an MMO where you're just like, I just have to do it. I just have to do it. I can't, I got to do it because it earns me the money to do this other stuff. And I just have to do the freaking weekly thing. I got to do the laundry because otherwise I don't wear clothes. And if I don't wear clothes, I can't get anything else done. All right. I guess I've framed my entire life in terms of video games now. I've successfully framed everything that I do in terms of a video game. It's a little bit wild. But that is everything I have this week. As always, we've got the Twitch stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We've got YouTube shorts that come out at the same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then what else do we have? I never really promote the Ko-Fi, coffee. I don't know why they called it coffee and then spelled it Ko-Fi. It's like begging for people to not find the website. But Ko-Fi. If you would like to support the podcast, that's a great way to do it. I tend to not mention it. I tend to not push it at all, but trying to be better about it. There you go. That's an option for supporting the podcast if you'd like. And that's about that. Stop by, hang out, join the Discord, you know, the whole thing. Have a good time. And at the very least, get out there, make some stuff, and have fun with it. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.